All right.
I think professors don't let them go to these events.
Okay, I'm just going to start taking the roll here at the remote campuses. Julie in Spokane. Is
Here
Julie?
on the phone.
Great. Ted in Spokane. Ted is here. Naomi Chator in Spokane. Joanne in Spokane.
Do I push this one?
I'm sorry? That didn't sound like a Joanne.
No, apologies. We're just trying to figure out the AMS thing.
Joanne's not here.
All right. Glenn in Spokane.
I'm here.
Patricia in Spokane. Naomi Lundstrom in Spokane.
On the phone.
Very good. Kay Myers in Spokane. Very good. Janet in Spokane.
Here on the phone.
Kelly in Spokane. Do we have a Kelly? Who is that who just came in, if you don't mind my asking?
Naomi Chater.
Okay, very good. I'll mark you present. Corey in Spokane. Ahmed in Spokane. Lanika in Spokane.
Present on the phone.
Very good. Ben in Tri-Cities.
Yes.
Hey, you here?
Robin?
Hey, here?
Yes.
Hey, here.
Good.
Okay,
Good.
We just get figure out how to answer you.
I understand.
Gee?
Robin in Spokane. Do we have a Robin or not?
Robin not show up yet,
All right.
but I think we maybe on the way, whatever.
John in Vancouver. Elizabeth in Vancouver. Shameen in Vancouver. Susan in Vancouver. Are we connected to Vancouver today? Renee in Vancouver. Kimber in Vancouver. I am seriously wondering if we're connected to the Vancouver campus today. If someone could please check on that. Nick in Yakima. Jennifer in Cowlitz. Jose in Snoqualmie.
I'm here on the phone.
Very good. Timothy in Franklin.
Yes, here.
Very good. So a little problem there with the Vancouver campus, but there are so many people present. I'm sure we have a quorum. Do we have a quorum?
Yeah, and they were working on the Vancouver connection, so there was some problems.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All right. I call the meeting to order. The first order of business is the approval of the minutes of March 7th. Do I hear any amendments or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, the minutes are approved. There are a few.
Hello?
Hello?
Yes, this is Vancouver. We've just now connected, so we're here.
All right, let me go through very quickly then.
Yes, I'm so sorry, but we've just now been able to.
Not your fault. Is John there?
Yes, this is John.
All right, Elizabeth?
Here.
Shameen? Susan?
No.
Renee?
I'm here.
Kimber?
I'm here.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Jeanette, this is Robin in the Tri-Cities.
Robin, show up.
Very
Jim
good.
Robertson, but if I'm not on your attendance list, I can leave.
You're most welcome, on the attendance list or not. All right, we have quite a busy meeting before us today, as I think probably many of you anticipate. But first of all, there are the information items. And one of them I do want to actually announce and bring to your attention, something that you already know, I suppose, but simply that you elected David Turnbull as your next chair-elect. And he is I'm very pleased with that and very excited about it, but he's away at the conference. But I'd still like a round of applause for your new chair-elect. I think he's going to do a wonderful job. All right, the rest is just there for your information. So we'll go on if there's no objection to the reports. And first of all, just a few remarks from me. And I just want to set a few ground rules just in case we get significant discussion today. We may not. Your committees all work so hard on our discussion items, on the things that they propose. We may not need to discuss them, but should we, I just want to say that could we try to limit ourselves to 2 comments per person so that we can actually get through all of our business today. And if significant issues with the discussion items emerge, I want to remind you of the possibility that you can make an amendment. But the way we would like to do this is we would like to have you think out your amendment between now and the next meeting and send it before the next meeting in writing via email to the Faculty Senate office, just so these things can proceed in an orderly way. Our next meeting will be our last meeting. So all of the discussion items at the next meeting, anything that we will ask for a motion to move those to action items, and you will have an opportunity to vote all of them up or down. All right. That said, we are going to move on to remarks by our provost, Dan Bernardo.
Well, thanks. Thanks for having me. Thanks, Jeanette. I just, when I asked the leadership team what they wanted me to talk about, they said I could talk about anything I wanted to. So I could talk about my bracket, I guess, or, you know, or, but yeah, we don't want to talk about my bracket. So I just want to, first of all, it's Showcase Week, which is a great week, and hopefully you're enjoying some of the events. They've really been tremendous, and I think that's one thing that WSU does really well, I think, is Showcase Week. This is my 4th institution, and it's the only one that really has done something like this to really celebrate faculty achievement along with our graduate students. So some really fun events, still a couple more to go. We did have to postpone our faculty lecture, unfortunately, but we'll have that on April 9th, I believe. I also wanted to thank this group. There's been, you know, you look at of course, I always look at the agenda, and there's a lot of work going on, and of course, as your work schedule typically is, there's a very, very heavy load right now. There's been three things I just wanted to highlight that are, I think, really important. They're all important, but three that we've really been working on pretty hard through the year or even longer than that. One, the inclement weather policy for Pullman. Appreciate everybody's help with that. That obviously was something that was vividly needed, as shown by February's weather. If you read my newsletter, which maybe somebody did, but I talked about how many, and I'm not like up for, sympathy or whatever. We spent a tremendous amount of time on conference calls at 10 in the evening and then at 5 in the morning trying to make the right decision. Some of these things are stochastic processes, and you do the best you can with the information you have. I think we did pretty well. We botched one pretty badly, I will admit, but it looked like the right decision at 5 in the morning. But obviously, safety is paramount. But we appreciate everybody's flexibility. I know for instructors that was really tough, and it just wasn't in Pullman. All of our campuses were enduring this. In fact, I would guess that probably Everett might have been the hardest hit. Now, that's because if it snows a half an inch, it's a life-changing experience there. But you're also going to, I think, talk some about, Mary's here to talk about Rule 53, which is, what we're proposing, and we worked with Faculty Senate, Academic Affairs on in terms of changing the requirements for certification in the major. I think the main point there is we want to be really competitive for top students, and we feel like this, and our recruiters and our deans and our recruiters, even at the college level, feel that this will open things up a little bit, because I'll tell you, like in engineering, even UW Engineering is certifying some of their students coming in as freshmen. And so what we're trying to do is give our departments and our programs the opportunity to really make those decisions about how they want to certify their students and not have a university rule that would impede their decision making. So I know you'll be talking some about that. You've read about it. Tracks and appointments. Again, that was Judy's project when she was chair of the Faculty Senate. Was that last year? That was last year. Yeah, last year. So that's been about a two-year project. It's really evolved really well. Again, I think you've heard it's a work in progress, and there's been some really great discussion around that. We have 102 faculty titles at WSU. Simplification is a primary goal there, right? And I'm sure Denise will be discussing that. So again, thank you for those. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have of me on any of those if you would like. So one of the questions that I get regularly is about deans. A month and a half ago, we had all deans filled. I was pretty happy about that. Today, we have 3 projected openings with deans, nursing, pharmacy, and vet med. Just to kind of quickly give you some sort of timetables there. Pharmacy, Dean Pollock will be with us until early August. That's good. So we have some time to initiate a search. We're trying to initiate that search in concert with the typical timetable as outlined by the Dean of Pharmacy, who's going to be a real asset for us in recruiting the next dean. And we'll be really launching that search actively around August. But of course, we have some preliminary work to set up a search firm, a search committee, get a position description together, et cetera. But we'll be in the active recruitment mode around August. Nursing we have appointed interim leadership in the College of Nursing. Mel Haberman is our interim dean, and Renee Huxell and Celestino Barbosa Likert are our interim executive associate deans there. And we'll be launching that search before the end of the semester. And then Vet Med, Dean Slinker, as you saw, announced his, not really retirement, but stepping down from his dean position. He doesn't have a specific end date. I think we would like to not have interims, and I think that's a great gesture on his part. So we will be really kind of on a timetable to initiate that search in the summer, and certainly be having interviews sometime probably in the later fall. So that's kind of our current dean situation. I haven't heard of any others. Maybe I just shouldn't be answering the phone. I did want to talk just really briefly about the reorganization in Spokane, in specific how it affects faculty and faculty affairs, okay? So the number one question I get about that is, how is that going to affect tenure and promotion? Well, for next year, it's not going to at all, because the faculty manual hasn't been changed to reflect any of this restructuring. And so we will be continuing to do things exactly as with the faculty manual, okay? Maybe next year there will be some proposals brought to this group and to faculty affairs about how we might change some things with this structure where the deans are reporting to the chancellor. However, the president has made it clear that tenure and promotion will remain within the purview of the provost office. So how we do that, Craig Parks I have with me. Craig's really kind of leading a committee that the president has appointed to try to work out all these transition issues with this restructuring. But I think the president's been very clear that he doesn't want sort of two tenure and promotion systems, one for health sciences in Spokane and one for the rest of the university. So that's about what I can tell you. But if you have colleagues that are concerned about that, and certainly they should be, right? I mean, if you're in nursing or pharmacy, you'll have a new dean, you'll have a chancellor there, you'll have hopefully a new provost. So that obviously creates anxiety. I realize that, and we'll have to manage it the best we can. Just my last little topic is fall enrollment. Fall enrollment looks really good for the Pullman campus. Right now we're tracking like we were last year, but we have earlier confirmations than last year. We're on track. We're hoping to be around 4,200 freshmen and about 1,200 transfers. So while we're tracking like last year, there's several factors that will not translate to 4,540 students, freshmen, like last year on the Pullman campus. So we're pretty confident about that. I mean, it is a good problem to have that students want to come here. I can tell you that of the nearly 3,000 confirmations we have at this particular point in time to the Pullman campus, 55% of those have high school grade point averages above 3.5. So we continue to make progress in terms of the preparedness of our students. The situation right now, particularly in Tri-Cities and Vancouver, is not as healthy. It's a little early to tell there because transfer students commit later, and those both campuses are highly influenced by the transfer market. But we are down right now somewhere in the order of about 20% for those campuses. But again, it's a little early to say, and they're working really hard. And we're trying to move some of the applicants of the students that we had sort of, that had expressed a desire to go into Pullman, but we likely will not have space for them. We're trying to move some of those applications for review by the folks at Tri-Cities and Vancouver. So I like, what we're doing in enrollment. It's been a tough slug for about 5 years since we brought it over to the provost office, or assumed it. Elson sent it over to the provost office, but regardless, since we assumed leadership, I think we're really, our brand is much better, both out of state and in state, and we got a really great team working there. So with that, that's sort of my report. I'll be happy to answer any questions about those topics or anything else that you might have in mind. Wow, you guys are easy. Okay.
So just 1 second, okay?
Uh-oh.
Oh, no big thing, Dan. But as you may be aware, Dan is going to be stepping down from the provost chair for a quieter life here at WSU, and a longer one, as I understand it.
Hopefully.
But as you also may know, he has been a most sweetly reasonable and hardworking provost, and this is our goodbye. So please join me in thanking Dan. And we have a small gift for you, Dan.
That's a nice big gift.
It's a big gift.
Oh, excellent. Wow, we've got, oh, nice, some Lake Chelan Blue Spirits gin. And some, some tonic to go with it. Maybe some limes are in here, some glasses, excellent. We will I will make good use of this tonight. Okay, yeah, I see that, okay. Well, thank you. Maybe we probably will use this. Well, thanks again. No questions? That's okay. Thank you again. Thanks,
Thank you,
everybody.
Dan.
It's been a pleasure, and I know sometimes with decisions that come down that you sometimes wonder where the provost is, representing the faculty. We've always tried to represent the faculty around the big table with all the university, vice presidents, etc. We need that voice, more voice around that table. Sometimes I feel like a solitary whisper amongst a bunch of people that, trying to do good things, but really have never been a faculty member. So we try to communicate what it's like in the trenches and what we're hearing. So I hope we've done that. So thank you.
You have, and we will very much miss you, Dan.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so we've had a theme this year, one university, many campuses theme. And we tried to have speakers here from some of the other campuses. And so is Sarah here? Sarah Transgressor? Am I saying it right? Is Sarah here? Sarah is, I believe, speaking today.
We're going to get a Sarah here, I think, somewhere.
We have her PowerPoint, but we don't have Sarah.
Oh, so she has a, oh, so Well, we do have quite a full agenda, so I'm going to suggest, would someone please move that we put Sarah at the end of the meeting?
Can we wait for a little bit, because for some reason just get out. So maybe someone go first and Sarah second?
Well, what we could do is change it to, we're just about to go into,
Okay, we got a slice here, but it's Sarah didn't show
yes,
up.
we're just about to go into our action items and our discussion items. So again, I'm going to suggest, Rob, please.
Do we need to get the remote campuses to mute their microphone? Somebody's coming through like there's a radio.
Yes, so there seems to be some interference. Does anyone have a radio on or anything of that sort? If not, can our technical people please try to sort out what is going on? All right.
Somebody on the phone who's not muted.
Someone on the phone who's not muted, perhaps. That does sound better, doesn't it? Okay, good. Thank you. And again, I'm suggesting that someone move to have Sarah's remarks transferred
I
to.
move that we wait, move her to the end.
Okay, do I hear a second? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right. So when you see Sarah, tell her not to worry. She will be just before constituent concerns. Very good. All right. Now for our action items. Oh, additions or changes to the agenda. We just had one. Do we have any more? Thank you, Greg. No more. All right. Action items. Recommendation from the Academic Affairs Committee to approve the undergraduate major change bulletin number 11. And Casey Hildebrand is here. Casey? Debbie. So Debbie is vice chair of that committee, and she will speak to your concerns. So Debbie, so I'll just call you Debbie for today. So are there any questions, any discussion? All in favor of hearing none? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. Motion carries. Recommendation from the Academic Affairs Committee to approve the proposal to extend the BA in English to the global campus. And once again, Debbie can speak to your concerns. Are there any concerns? Is there any discussion?
Yeah, okay.
All in favor of the recommendation, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. The recommendation carries. Recommendation number 3 from the Academic Affairs Committee to approve the proposal to create a new degree, a BA in Human Biology. And again, Debbie can speak to your concerns. Are there any questions or discussion? All in favor of the recommendation, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Recommendation carries. Recommendation from the Academic Affairs Committee to approve the revision to Rule 110. Undergraduate university requirement for graduation. And again, Debbie can speak to your concerns. Are there any questions or any discussion? All in favor of the recommendation, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. The recommendation carries. Recommendation from the Graduate Studies Committee to approve the revised plan on pharmaceutical sciences. And is it Doug or Alex, who's
Alex
here?
Dimitrov is in Vancouver.
Okay, very good, Alex. Alex can speak to your questions or concerns. Hearing none, all in favor of the recommendation, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Please say nay. The recommendation carries. Next, we have the recommendation from the Graduate Studies Committee to approve the revised plan on veterinary science, the veterinary science PhD in immunology and infectious diseases. And again, Alex can speak to any questions or concerns you may have. All in favor of the recommendation, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. The recommendation carries. Recommendation from the Graduate Studies Committee to approve the revised plan on nutrition and exercise physiology, coordinated program in dietetics, MD, non-thesis. And again, Alex can speak to your questions and concerns. All in favor of the recommendation, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Next, the recommendation from the Graduate Studies Committee to approve a new graduate certificate in environment, water resources, science management. And again, Alex can speak to your concerns. All in favor of the recommendation, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Next, recommendation from the Graduate Studies Committee to approve Graduate Major Change Bulletin Number 10. And again, Alex can speak to your concerns. All in favor of the recommendation, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Recommendation from the Professional Health Sciences Committee to approve the proposal to revise the grading bias for the College of Pharmacy. And I'm sorry? Oh, grading basis, right, of course, for the College of Pharmacy. And John is here to address any of your questions or concerns. All in favor of the recommendation, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. And last, the recommendation to approve the Professional Health Sciences Major Change Bulletin Number 3. And again, John is here and can address any concerns you may have. Was that a no? All right. All in favor of the recommendation, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. The recommendation passes. Moving on to the discussion items. First, the recommendation from the Academic Affairs Committee to approve undergraduate major change bulletin number 12. And again, Debbie can speak to your concerns. Are there any questions or is there any discussion? Moving on then to the recommendation from the Academic Affairs Committee to approve the revision of Rule 53 and 56 certification and decertification on majors. And again, Debbie can speak to your concerns, although there are several people here today, including Mary Wack, who would be happy to, should you have any. I believe parliamentary procedure is I will call on you, and then would you please say your name, and I will repeat your name for the record.
Robert Crossler from the College of Business.
The chair recognizes Robert Crossler.
So this one came up as a concern in our college. At first was a personal concern. One was that the documentation for this was not available until very late in the process. So it was difficult to know kind of what we were even considering until I think yesterday. And it seems that with this proposal that the details still need to be worked out, which is very concerning. And it basically it states that it needs to change so we can work out those details. And some questions were raised related to that. And these may be the details that have to be worked out, but the question has to do with if we get rid of the certification into majors or into colleges, can different campuses have different continuation requirements regarding GPA? As in, could there be differences between what we require in Pullman versus Vancouver versus Tri-Cities based on demand and student interest in these various different majors? In terms of reentry to the major, could a college set limit on the number of times a student is allowed to repeat a course taught in that college? In terms of justification, there's a lot of numbers about nursing, engineering, and business about the number of students we don't retain. But there's a question about how exactly making this change from certification to continuation requirements actually would solve this problem. So there's some concerns
So
just
would you
about these
repeat
details.
that solve what problem?
The last one, so there were a bunch of numbers in this proposal about students that were lost, that we were not retaining because they weren't certifying into majors, which is definitely a real concern. But the question is, how exactly is moving from certification to continuation requirements going to solve the problem of students, I guess, not making it through the program, if you will? So is this solution actually solving anything, is the question.
All right. So I would like to, you have three very good questions there, and I'm wondering, Debbie, do you want to take this, or Mary? Do you want to turn this question over to Mary, or would you like to get together at the microphone and both speak to these questions?
We can work on this together. I think that's probably a good idea. Come on down, Mary. I appreciate the questions. I think we started to try to wrestle with some of those at Academic Affairs last week, and probably the lateness of getting information out is a result of some of that wrestling. We asked Mary and her team to go back and actually do an awful lot of work before the materials were presented for faculty review. And so those things, I was trying to write down your notes as we went. In terms of the details, I would say yes, that is one of the concerns that Academic Affairs had as well. And to that end, we asked that the people who are involved in working out the details really do represent the advising community as well as the teaching community on campus, and bring in whatever expertise we need in terms of technological help to make sure that any of the milestones and requirements that we put into place do not create extra work for the people who have to work with them. And right now, a lot of those things are manually done, and so we do know that it is a lot of work for advisors if there are a lot of milestones to track. I'm going to let Mary probably talk to the different GPAs on different campuses, and in terms of, and maybe on reentry as well. So at this point in time, I know that there is a lot of freedom given to the departments to determine many things about how students would retain their status in a program, progress in a program, and so we have a lot of work maybe to do to clarify those steps, those milestones, and to make sure that it's really clear to the students and to the faculty how that progression will continue.
Yes. Greg was just pointing out that the proposal is for implementation in fall 2020 for that entering class. And so there is an entire year and more to work out some logistics. But let me back up a step and say that there has been some really excellent feedback and discussion coming out of Academic Affairs Committee, out of multiple advising groups, a lot of input from colleges, college leadership, and faculty. And so through this process, there has been a clarification and distillation, if you will, of what the rule change is really all about. And that kind of accounts for why you have had multiple documents and then the most recent one today, which has the current proposed change. And that change really is pretty simple. It removes the university requirement for 24 credits to be completed before a student can enter a major. Okay, so that requirement is removed. And it underscores that departments set the requirements for entry or admission into the major. So the effect of the change is to allow any department that wishes to move in the direction of admitting freshmen to the major, they are able to do that without a university barrier of 24 credits being there. So that is the effect of the change. Now, whether departments move in the direction of continuous progression and all of that, that is open for them to decide. But really, the actual text of the change is permissive rather than, mandatory. It allows for departments to do that without the requirement for 24 credits to be completed. So, can campuses have different continuation requirements? I think that is a question to be considered in the next year and really is an issue within a college. I believe that colleges already use and work certification slightly differently on a campus basis. And so admission to the major really is a discussion within the college about whether admission will be different on the different campuses. Can a college set limits on repeats? I believe right now repeats is a university level rule. I know repeats are under discussion as to whether the grade triggering the possibility of a repeat changes. So that, I think, is a conversation that would happen between colleges and academic affairs and this body because it would involve changing an academic reg. And how would change solve the retention issue? Here's the way that I think about that. And it's not going to wipe it out entirely, and it's not going to change it overnight. But if a department or a college admits students at the freshman level, those students who are in are spared the stress, the time, the money of going through an up to 60 credit process that at the end of the day may really rest on factors extrinsic to their accomplishments academically, and really rest on is there enough space this year as opposed to last year, potentially next year. So it's a fairer system, a more transparent system for the students who are accepted in and then have to meet whatever requirements the department set to stay in. So we then are spared the situation that so many students are in, some fraction, substantial fraction of whom leave, of going that distance and incurring the debt and so on, and then don't have the degree, any degree or the degree that they were initially seeking. The tough part, and the part where we're really looking to the advisors and the faculty to help out, it's the opportunity, but it's the challenge, is for those 700 students who want engineering across the system, of whom maybe 400 will make it in. How do we, at that moment of entry into the university, and this is just, let's hypothesize, it's engineering that wants to move in this direction, how do we work with those students to move them into a better fit major at 0 to 30 credits rather than 60 plus credits? So that's where we're thinking we can get some retention gains if we can match the students better to the majors that they are suited for earlier rather than later. Whoops, sorry, I'm not in charge of the parliamentary process.
Yes, Senator.
So just one clarification question. So if a college chooses to still have a certification, say, after 24 credit hours, that is still up to them to make that choice. It's not being mandated that that goes away. It's just being created as an opportunity should we decide to go that way.
And it might be good, I think, just to shift our language to what most other places are using, and certainly the competitors in these highly competitive fields, which is more about admission to the major. Just replace this sort of older, more opaque term certification with admission to the major or continuation and so on.
So correct me if I'm wrong here, Mary, but I remember the provost saying it would be useful for recruiting too, because some other universities in the area, many other universities, you can just get into a major. You don't have to, well, maybe we'll let you in 2 years. And so that's very attractive to some fine students who might be hesitant otherwise.
Yes, that's a good point. And if I could just follow up Dan's comment about what admissions looks like. Pullman looks good, but longer term, I think we can't afford complacency about how attractive we are. And part of that does depend on what's happening in the feeder system of the community colleges. Clark College is way down in enrollment. Columbia Basin is way down in enrollment. And we're seeing that in Washington in the community college system. But nationally, there is projected to be a contraction of the number of students who will be available in the pool for recruitment into higher education, at least traditionally aged students. And so to the extent that we can position ourselves ahead of time for that moment that will come where it will be harder and harder to recruit the full 42, 43, 4,400, whatever the number is that we want in Pullman and the targets on the other campuses, I think moving in the direction of being able to say, yes, if you want engineering or, sports science or some other area, you could come in if the department chooses to go that direction.
And again, there are high standards. There's bars, there's courses you have to pass, bars you have to make, but the student would know as they went along whether they were meeting those requirements or not. So are there other questions or further discussion on this discussion item? Thank you so much, Mary and Debbie. All right. Our next discussion item, recommendation from the Academic Affairs Committee to approve UCOR Bulletin Number 3. And again, Debbie can speak to your concerns. Next, recommendation to approve the Professional Health Sciences Major Change Bulletin Number 4. And John can speak to your concerns. Next, recommendation from the Graduate Studies Committee to approve the revision to criminal justice and criminology MS and PhD requirements. And Alex can speak to your concerns. Next, recommendation from the Graduate Studies Committee to approve the revision to the Constraints Management Graduate Certificate. And Alex can address your concerns. Number 7, recommendation from the Graduate Studies Committee to approve the revision to Master of Engineering and Technology Management. And Alex can address your concerns. Recommendation from the Graduate Studies Committee to approve graduate major change bulletin number 11. And Alex can speak to your concerns. Recommendation from the Graduate Studies Committee to approve the revision to Systems Engineering Management Graduate Certificate. And Alex can speak to your concerns. Recommendation number 10 from the Graduate Studies Committee to approve the proposal to convert the Masters of Education in Educational Psychology non-thesis option. Alex can speak to your concerns. Next, recommendation number 11 from the Faculty Affairs Committee to approve the changes to the faculty manual, tracks, and appointments. Yes, please say your name. I'm wondering if you want to take the microphone, and Denise can share mine. Would that be better? Oh yes, I'm sorry. Before we discuss this item, Denise is going to make a request.
So before we begin the discussion, if there are no objections, I would like to read a clarifying statement.
Hearing none objections, you may proceed, Denise.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for being here, and thank you to everyone for submitting comments and concerns ahead of time. The proposed non-tenure track changes include 4 subtrack categories. Many concerns about the proposed subtracks focus on current clinical track faculty and perceptions that I hope to address directly in the next few statements. First, clinical faculty will remain in the non-tenure track, will retain their current rank in the track, and will be assigned to one of the 4 subtracks. The instructor subtrack is necessary and important, as it allows for those with primarily teaching duties recognized status in the career non-tenure track, and it allows for our instructional excellence to continue, recognizing that not all who teach have terminal degrees. Furthermore, including the instructor subtrack in the non-tenure track faculty promotes long-serving faculty and will allow us to retain and incentivize them accordingly. Additionally, current clinical track faculty who do not have terminal degrees will not be forced into a subtrack, as they already have a proven and valued track record in the university. As this is already explicitly established in the proposed change, there is no need to quote unquote grandfather in those who have already established this value. Perhaps most importantly, the misconception that this document would serve to, in any way, demoralize or demote any faculty member could not be further from the truth. For example, concerns regarding a perceived demotion for the appointment of an individual to the instructor subtrack in the non-tenure track rank is in fact a statement that characterizes the cultural inequity that is feared. Many of us work to recognize and support the importance of each role at this university. The teaching faculty are as important as any other faculty in this system. Failure to recognize that appointments serve to promote equity is a failure to acknowledge the flexibility written into the document. Working titles that are most appropriate in a given unit are afforded. Alternative credentials in each non-tenure subtrack are explicitly promoted. There are no must or have to clauses in the language. Finally, as we begin this discussion, I ask that we consider the fact that the current appointments and titles at the university do not fully recognize the diversity of faculty and the importance of the non-tenure track faculty in particular. While we cannot address every important issue, we can certainly work to forward and evolve issues of appointment that we may then have a foundation from which to continue to improve the university climate of recognition for each faculty member. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. All right. Please state your name, and I will repeat it for the record.
Dilma Navarro Daniels, School of Languages, Cultures, and Race.
The chair recognizes Senator Ilania.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the clarification. And I think it's important to say that many faculty have found some ambiguity in the document, and this is why so many concerns have raised. And I think that it's important to keep working on the document in order to make sure for everybody at the WSU community that this will not be understood as demotion of people from the clinical track to the instructor category. In my school, the 50% of clinical faculty do not hold a terminal degree. And this is a huge proportion. So there are some concerns. People are afraid about demotion because the language in the document must be specified about alternative, for instance, alternative credentials. What does that mean, for instance? No? So we really would like to have a discussion in our academic units and in some manner collect the opinion of many faculty and faculty that maybe feel that they will be impacted in a very negative way if this document is implemented. So the concern is there. And I think it's based on the ambiguity of the language. More clarification is needed because many people raised, their concerns.
So may I make a suggestion, Greg, and you can, or Denise, and it may be a bad one and you can reject it, but could people maybe identify the language that they see as ambiguous and email that concern to Denise, and maybe we can fix ambiguous language between this meeting and our next meeting. Denise is, please, Denise.
I just wanted to speak to the one piece that you identified specifically, which is the alternative credentials. The alternative credentials are very important, and that is decided on a unit basis. So there is not a definition that we can provide of what alternative credentials would be department to department. That is left to the unit to decide. And I think that is the fellow peers in a unit specifically, that language is in there, that they get to decide what the alternative credentials are, that those are also approved up the chain from there. I don't assume to be an expert in any department or know what those alternative credentials would be. So it really would be up to the unit to specify, these are the alternative credentials, and certainly those that are already in the position with alternative credentials should be a key component of that conversation.
So there, I think the idea is to leave the language open so that very many different kinds of alternative credentials would be honored as such. But yes, Please.
Charles Weller, College of Arts and Sciences, non-tenure track faculty representative.
The chair recognizes Senator Charles.
Thank you. Thank you, Denise, and everybody for your work on this important proposal. It's certainly important to address issues of rank and appointment and title and everything else that's involved in it, track and titles. So thank you for all the hard work. I know it's very difficult to face all these, challenges and concerns and even misunderstandings. I think the language that's been most debated in my conversations with multiple people has been in the memo. And I want to distinguish here that as I understand it myself in discussions with constituents, particularly non-tenure track, that the proposed language of the faculty manual itself, the proposed revisions, are not really an issue. The issue is in the memo that you wrote to the Faculty Senate to introduce the proposed revisions, and it's specifically under the subsection of clinical faculty, and particularly there it is, for example, current clinical faculty who do not have a terminal degree, which is normally required, and/or whose duties are predominantly teaching should move to the instructor 1, 2, or senior instructor category, where the job description more closely matches the educational credentials and workload. And there you say educational credentials and workload of the faculty, where you don't have an and/or, you had an and/or before, so there's some discrepancy questions that are there. But that's the key language that has really been debated here, where the should is involved there. There's a statement about moving these people from clinical faculty positions to instructor positions. And I don't know, you just said something about there's going to be none of that, that there would be no need for grandfathering because nobody needs to move. Is that correct? And I still want to make a comment if that's, I just clarifying. So, I would just say myself. So I'm a clinical assistant professor currently. I was an instructor for 4 years, and then I was recategorized to clinical assistant professor. It's as clear as can be to me in the academic world everywhere I go, in my professional associations, in my department, in the university, that titles matter. And that the title of assistant professor, regardless of whether, or associate or full, whether it has clinical appended to it or not, does make some difference. But the fact that assistant, associate, full professor is there means something, and it means something very important. In my case, I did my PhD in Kazakhstan. I did it in the Kazakh language in Kazakhstan for the sake of post-colonial international academic dialogue and exchange, in interreligious and intercultural exchange. I earned my PhD there, so I have a PhD. I'm not so concerned about the credential issue there. But my predominant, quote unquote, which is also a vague, nebulous term there, about my contract is 80% teaching, 10% service, and 10% research. So if 80% is considered predominant, and you're going to, based on that and/or language, move me from clinical assistant professor, and I'm up for promotion to clinical associate professor this coming year, and if you move me to instructor 1 or 2, I'm just going to say that that will devastate my career.
Can we let Denise respond?
That will devastate my career. And many of my other colleagues, I'm speaking on behalf as an example.
I guess first speaking to the language in the memo. And the memo was, the intention of the memo is to be a guiding document. It's not in the faculty manual. And the intention here was really to kind of start to lay out some guidelines, having no control over how this will go unit to unit because there's so much afforded in the document, if you will. Specifically addressing your concern with the clinical faculty and the language there and the should. I first want to recognize that in the 4 subtracks for the non-tenure track, instructor is in there on purpose, and it doesn't require a terminal degree on purpose to allow for concerns that we've had otherwise where we have alternative credentials, and those folks should be recognized in the non-tenure track. The should language is actually a clarifier moving forward. And part of the issue here that gets a little bit tied up in, especially talking about the titles in particular, is that the view of instructor in this case would be a demotion based on how culturally we are perceiving what that means. And I hear your concern, and I appreciate your concern, but the should language really has to do with how do we most accurately align job descriptions and what we're doing. And I understand that if I've been called a clinical assistant professor, which I also am, right? And if I teach 100%, and I see that in the non-tenure track, there's 4 tracks, and the instructor most fits what I do, I think there's huge value in recognizing that that is equally as important as someone in a clinic, as someone who does 100% of research, as someone who also might have a scholarly appointment with an 80-10-10 or a 50-50 or whatever that is determined to be per unit. And there is no forcing into, this is a conversation, and I think one that really needs to happen so that everyone is not just in a category, or as Dan mentioned, we have over 100 different titles at the university, which also undermines, frankly, what that means. And so how do we move forward in a way? I'm not saying that the document is perfect, but to that point. Second, I just want to address, titles do matter. And the title, especially the working title, can be determined in unit. So professor of practice is a very popular one. If the unit decides that's what it's going to be, that's what it should be. It should also be documented in the departmental, the unit, the college, I'm forgetting the word, going forward. So that it's documented and we can track those things per unit.
I have a question here, a little clarification, which is, in that case, in the case he describes, would he be in the scholarly track? So there's a middle track, which is a scholarly track, which is people who teach, but they do other things too. And I don't know how clearly it's defined what percentage of other things they need to do. So that's a, yes, yes.
Yes, I'm Lisa Wannanen-Jones from the College of Communication. And I actually have handouts, so I have things if people want to see them. If you're on a computer, I also have a link for you to view. This is something that I've been working on with some other faculty across the university. We have gotten out of our silos because of this issue. And this is something that I've shared with a number of people already, but you can find it online if you're there at murrowcourses.com, and there's a big link at the top of that, which is just my course website. Otherwise, I don't know if it's practical to hand these out to people, but what I have is an actual recommended revision. I'll try to keep the comments fairly brief about this. From my perspective, we don't need to address the question of terminal degrees at this time. I think that the work being done here is really fabulous as far as establishing these tracks, updating these definitions, which is very much needed. If you read the faculty manual, many of those definitions do not at all reflect the way the titles are being used at the university right now. However, there is this problematic language about terminal degrees. There's a lot of questions around that, and I think there's a good opportunity for us to just eliminate that for now by cutting the language, specifically the paragraph. This is sort of repeated throughout the document. This is in the tracks and appointments policy, which is Exhibit H1 if you're following along there. Where it says a terminal degree is normally required. Alternative credentials will be approved in consultation with unit faculty by the administrative head and by the provost or chancellor, a faculty member hired as an assistant professor, and it continues on. If you're not reading it, we can check on that later. What I'm recommending is that we strike that paragraph from each of the subtracks until we can have further discussion about questions regarding terminal degrees. For instance, how do we define that? Does it have to be in your field? Should a terminal degree be a university level requirement? How are we establishing and approving alternative credentials? Basically all the questions we've already heard today. This is not something that we need to necessarily take on now just to approve this vast improvement in the tracks and titles that has been worked on this year.
Before I pass the mic to Denise, I want to reiterate, if you have specific suggestions, email faculty.senate@wsu.edu with those suggestions. This is just a discussion item today, and it won't come for vote until next week, or the 11th of April.
That way, we can, Gail, how would we do this? I think it would be good for everyone to, if we're sending the amendments to the Senate office, then can we put it up on the site or something like that so people can really look at these amendments, and then next time we can vote them up or down?
Yes.
So just do send them in, and we'll put them up. Where, Gail? Where will they be exactly?
We'll take care of it. We'll make something that where it's obvious.
All right. Senator Janet?
I'm Janet Schmidt, representing Connors Extension, filling in for Brian Brandt, who's on sabbatic. And so we, in Extension, have been reviewing this as well, and we have some points that need clarification. We are faculty members, Extension faculty members. We're located across the state, out in the counties. We do many of the same things that on-campus academic faculty do. We're Extension, so we do research, we do teaching, we're the connection of the university to the people in the state. And the majority of our degrees are master's degrees, although we have several within Extension that have the terminal or the PhD degree. So just some questions regarding like some of the contracts and the appointments. So it says contingent or continuous. I'll use the unit I'm in, the youth and family unit. We have 36 positions in our unit, 33 are permanent funding PBL, and so I'm not sure how contract language impacts that. 24 of these are tenure track positions, so I know there's been some discussion of perhaps moving Extension from tenure track to career track. However, many of us are tenured. The titles we use are assistant, associate, and professor. So just some questions regarding that. Then furthermore on that, how would that impact things like retirement, sick leave, payout, VEBA, those types of things if titles or tracks were to change? So those are some of the questions.
Denise, can you answer any of those questions?
So those are just some of the points that we felt we needed some clarification on. Another one is, as is now, we are entitled to our sabbatic or professional leave. If we were to change tracks, it seemed like that was somewhat up in the air, that we may not have that opportunity or would have to negotiate that. So those are just some of the points that we feel like we need more clarification on. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. And shall we give?
And you had two, because we have a whole bunch more discussion.
Yes, and we'll maybe give Denise the chance to address these.
So you'll have to help me as we go along, because I was making notes along the way. First, the contract, and I think you were talking about continuous contracts, et cetera. That is different or separate from tracks and appointments. So you have a track and appointment, and then you have an assigned. So that's in parallel, and certainly not part of this per se. I think it's a fantastic question, not one that I can address. So that is kind of on a per person basis, and this does not have to do with that part of the appointment. I think there was a comment, and I didn't follow the tenure track to non-tenure track. I think you were talking about maybe moving from tenure track to non-tenure track.
We currently have individuals, the majority of us at Extension are on tenure track, although we have some individuals that are on promotion track. And so in your diagram that you have set out, you actually have tenure track and then you have career track. And I think it's been maybe discussed that Extension as a whole will move from one to another. But yet, many of us were already on a tenure track. We've already gone through all those steps.
Yeah, my understanding is that the promotion track in Extension is the career track. So those things are synonymous now.
Yes.
Yes.
But most of us are on a tenure track.
Tenure track remains unchanged here, yes. I think there was a question about professional leave. Certainly one of the aspirational statements that is in the cover letter is to have professional leave for non-tenure track faculty. And I think those types of things are in the works. There's nothing right now for the career track professional leave. Was there something else that I missed?
We just, mean, currently, whether we're promotion track or tenure track, we have the opportunity for professional lead.
Mhm. And that should remain, as far as I understand.
Okay, it's
Yes.
just the language was, it leaved, the way it was worded, there was more opportunity for interpretation that perhaps it wouldn't be there.
Okay.
Again, you might identify the ambiguous language and write out an amendment that clarifies it to your satisfaction and send that amendment to the Faculty Senate office.
Anybody else?
Yes, we have a senator in the back here. And I can't see your, please say your name.
I'm Rachel Sanchez from the College of Arts and Sciences. Specifically, I'm in the English department, and I feel compelled to speak a bit from a department where a large majority of our faculty are non-tenure track faculty. And I think I want to echo a bit of the notion of maybe pulling that terminal degree language, because that's truly where a lot of our concerns are as a faculty. And I want to speak specifically to how the tracks and appointments might lead to concerns with regard to promotions specifically. We have many, many cases in our department where instructors have jumped rank to clinical with an MA. And when we talk about, not being worried about the terminal degree language, sometimes that comes from a position of I have a PhD or I have the degree that is a terminal degree, an MFA, for example, where we have many faculty in English with an MA working 10, 15 years with a significant amount of institutional and department knowledge that then gets translated to an additional rank jumping later on. And I think there are some concerns that this language then would prevent the ability for instructors who are working at the institution for 6, 8, 10, 12, 15 years to jump into a more suitable rank, like a scholar subtrack, if something like a terminal degree language is left in place.
So I will just reiterate that alternative credentials are an important part of having that in there. There is the terminal degree specified, but the alternative credentials is what allows for this flexibility. And frankly, it is in every single subtrack, and it's in there on purpose. And so while it may seem like something that we would like to maybe not address at this time, I would just have us think a little bit more particularly about the fact that it's an issue. Whether it's in there or not, it's an issue. And so I think if it's in there and we're clear about it is the terminal degree or not, and there's alternative credentials that can be approved so that we are recognizing those people, that is why it's in there. And so, there's also, we're an academic institution. And yes, degrees matter, titles matter, all those things matter. And we need some flexibility as well to say that, in comm, we have someone with experience in the field that doesn't have a degree, and we absolutely want them teaching our students what it is that they know. If there's someone with a master's and they've advanced in rank, there is nothing in here that is going to purposefully demote someone or is meant to put anyone in anything other than a recognized state for their contributions.
This again, it's a discussion item, and
Right.
if you can either email concerns to the faculty.senate@wsu.edu. You can use the constituent concerns, but we really should.
We should move on.
We should move on. It is, but we've got more discussion items, and we have to We have another meeting. This is a discussion
We
item.
have one more
and We have
meeting.
one more meeting.
So, Senator Lisa, we'll do the best we can with the time we have, but we may stay late tonight. I hope that's okay with you all. And the chair recognizes Senator Rob Quinlan.
I'll be really brief. I don't really see what problem this solves, and it seems to me that it creates more than it resolves. So that's my comment.
And again, you all may speak twice. I'm going to take another couple of comments. So,
I'll be very brief. I think that we should not vote in 2 more weeks if we have so many concerns. we should have a new document, and the document should be discussed again before going for a vote. That's my proposal.
We can move to send the document back to the committee to consider all of the concerns that will be forwarded. That is a possibility. That is something we could do here today, as I understand it. Senator Charles gets one more comment.
Just real quick, another question that's raised in the transfer to other titles, tracks, et cetera, is a question of voting rights, a question of funding eligibility when it comes to grants or funding, eligibilities there, and participation in Faculty Senate, how Faculty Senate is structured, and all these things and how it affects across the board. And there have been conversations concerned about how this affects power within the university for voting rights and voices and participation in different things.
So I would, one more from Senator Pamela. The chair recognizes Senator Pamela.
You're getting my workout today.
I'd like to make, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to send it back to committee. We have so many faculty with concerns. There needs to be more discussion. It seems pretty obvious that we can't move this forward. So I think we need to send it back. And the committee needs also to consult more with the concerns of faculty members specifically.
Do I hear a second? Second. All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Please say nay. The motion is remanded to committee. And we get to go on. Next, recommendation from the Faculty Affairs Committee to approve the proposal for a health sciences teaching portfolio pilot. And I don't see, Faculty Affairs Committee, let's see, who's here from the Faculty Affairs Committee? Oh, yes, of course, Denise. Okay. Any questions for Denise? Next, recommendation from the Faculty Senate Steering Committee to approve revised Senate committee composition. Is there any discussion? Recommendation from the Educational Policy Task Force Committee to approve the revisions for the Educational Policy and Procedure Manual. Is there any discussion? Next, recommendations from the Faculty Senate Steering Committee to carry out all necessary functions of the Faculty Senate during the period of May 16th through August 15th, 2019. Do I hear any discussion? Yes. We have Sarah next, but we have precious little time. Sarah, I'm sorry to put you in this situation.
That's okay.
All right, so next we're going to hear briefly from Sarah from the Tri-Cities.
So let me see if I can get my presentation up there. Let me know if you can see it.
We can. We can.
You can? Okay, great. Well, I'll try to make this quick. I am thrilled to be here to present to you about the WSU Tri-Cities Resident Faculty Organization, which is the faculty shared governance body on the campus. So just to give you an idea of what I'll talk about quickly, I'm going to first go over our mission as the RFO, our structure, how we function, and then talk about some recent and current initiatives that we've been working on. So our mission is first to provide formal participation and representation of the resident faculty in the conduct of the overall academic mission of WSU Tri-Cities. Second, to review, assist, and advise the Chancellor and Vice Chancellors in achieving and maintaining academic excellence. Third, to elect the faculty senators. And fourth, to represent the faculty on the academic council. So our structure consists mainly of the RFO Executive Committee, which is the chair, which is myself, plus at least one representative from each of the academic units. And on our campus, that's mainly the college level. And we can have more than one executive rep, depending on the size of the unit. So for example, in arts and sciences, we have 2 reps because that's our largest unit. We have 1 representative from education, 1 from nursing, 1 from engineering, 1 from honors, 1 from libraries, 1 from business. And then this includes right now the non-tenured and tenured faculty senate representatives and the RFO secretary who do dual roles. But the resident faculty organization general membership includes all resident faculty. So if you're talking the membership of the RFO, this is all of our resident faculty. We mainly function through monthly executive committee meetings where the representatives bring their constituent concerns from their units. The other function of this meeting is to set the agenda for the chancellor meeting. We also have General Assembly meetings, which is open to the whole membership, meaning all of the resident faculty on the campus. And we have at least 1 per semester, but this varies. These can be scheduled depending on what issues have arisen, what concerns are coming to the table. We might have additional General Assemblies. And we typically get about 10 to 12% of our faculty in attendance, which we have a small faculty, so this might be 15 people, but this also generates additional agenda items and constituent concerns to bring to administration. We also have our monthly meeting with the chancellor, between the chancellor and the executive committee, and so this is where we bring our constituent concerns that are relevant to the chancellor. And we also have monthly meetings with the Vice Chancellor of Academic Affairs and the Assistant Vice Chancellor of Academic Affairs. So all of the constituent concerns that deal with academic affairs go to that meeting. We also function through our representation on campus committees. This includes the Space Committee, which is represented by the RFO Chair, the Chancellor's Leadership Council, which is also represented by the Chair, and then other committees as needed that form depending on the issues that are being discussed on the campus. We'll always have a representative from the RFO on those committees. And then, as you know, faculty senate representation as well. So to tell you about some recent initiatives, these are in the last couple of years. One of the issues was increased shared governance on the campus. The faculty didn't feel that they were truly being included in decision making and truly getting genuine communication from the administration on our campus, the former administration on our campus. So we advocated for increased shared governance, and that was in a number of ways. One of those was in improving the budgetary transparency on the campus. The faculty wanted to see what is the budget for the campus, and we wanted at least that process to be transparent. We accomplished this. We gained transparency and greater involvement in budgetary decisions on the campus. This included decisions about how travel money were allocated to faculty and changes in the travel money policy. We also advocated for changes in how dual enrollment programs were being run on the campus. So this was Running Start in college and the high school. There were issues around the selection and admissions of those students and how scheduling was operating that produced real problems in the classroom and problems for faculty. And our advocacy led to changes in those policies that benefited both students and faculty and the classroom environment for traditional students as well. So that was a big accomplishment. We also advocated for new hires. This led to 2 successful tenure track hires last year. And we had greater involvement in the chancellor search, which commenced with our new chancellor, which we're very excited about. She's done a wonderful job. So current initiatives, first is in wanting to improve the internal functioning of the campus. We felt that there's still culture and climate improvements that are needed. Some of that is just through collegiality and encouraging, just collegiality among faculty on the campus through social events and through awards, but also improving the flow of communication from administration to the faculty in a number of different ways at a number of different levels. So that's something we're working on. We are also advocating for better research and graduate education on the campus, or more research support and support for graduate education on the campus. One example is filling the graduate recruitment position, which had been removed and not filled, and also advocating for a role among the vice chancellors for supporting research, because we had a vice chancellor for research that didn't get filled. So looking at how the changes in structure among administration can fill these needs is something we're working on with the chancellor. Other current initiatives are clarifying administrative roles. So we had some structural changes in the Vice Chancellor of Academic Affairs and the Assistant Vice Chancellor of Academic Affairs in terms of their specific roles. So we're working with the Chancellor on what are their job descriptions for those roles now that they have changed, and also looking at the job description of directors. So on our campus, instead of deans, for the different college level units, we have directors, which act as an intermediary both between the faculty in the unit and academic affairs, but also between the faculty in the units and the chairs. So looking at the job description of directors for how they can better support faculty and what faculty should expect from their directors is something we're working on as those director job descriptions are being revised currently. And so the RFO will have input into that. We're also focusing on increasing the structure for supporting faculty towards promotion. Two of the ways we're doing this is first a support toward promotion checklist. And on our campus, this of course does not mean here are the things you need to do to get promoted, at least not especially for tenure line faculty. Rather, that's decided by the department, of course. But this checklist is for directors primarily to have a structure for saying, how are we on the campus supporting you? Because oftentimes faculty report a disconnect between what's expected from their department and maybe the resources or expectations on the campus. And this is an opportunity to sit down with faculty and say, do you feel that you're being supported at the campus level toward the things that your department has laid out for you in terms of their expectations for promotion? Is there anything we can do at the campus level to help support you in reaching those objectives towards promotion? So that's one of our current initiatives. And then also evaluating how context statements are working. So we, being on a non-Pullman campus, of course, the context statements can be more important to outline what is the context in which the person's working at the campus that can be helpful for directors in evaluating their work when they go up for promotion or tenure. We've found some glitches in how the context statements are working on our campus, some due to, for example, the timeline where context statements aren't due till quite a bit later often than when the annual reviews are being conducted by department chairs. So the context statements are coming in much later, and they're not therefore able to really inform the annual review process. Another glitch that we have found is that there's not a lot of clarity for directors in what the context statement should look like. So depending on the unit, those context statements can look very different. In some cases, they are just a repeat of everything that the faculty member has done in all areas, research, service, teaching, and kind of a summary narrative of the VITA with additional contextual information from the campus. In other cases, this might be just outlining campus-specific work and not touch on the other areas of their work. So it only touch on maybe service they've done to the campus and not even address research or teaching that is already covered, in their activity insight or their VITA. So giving some directors, just making decisions, do we want a more standardized framework for how context statements are used, what's working, what's not working, how do we better align the timeline of when directors write the statements to line up with the department's process of annual review in order to make those context statements as useful as possible for faculty and meaningful instead of something that's just another piece of busy work for the directors. So kind of hurrying because I'm not sure if we were going to get cut off or not, but we've found that in the last few years the faculty have a more central role in decision making on the campus due to, in part, the efforts to make sure that new administration is aware of the shared governance and importance of it on our campus. We've had a lot of support from the president, the provost, in changing that culture and making sure that the faculty have a real voice on our campus. And we've also elevated the role of the RFO so that faculty are aware that they have a group that can advocate for them and affect meaningful change, because we've been able to show that we can do that. So this gives them a voice both at campus level decisions and at university level decisions. So we feel like we've been doing a lot in the last few years, and we're really optimistic, especially with the change in administration here, that we will continue to have a real voice and influence on the campus.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you for being fast. And I'm afraid we won't have time for questions. I will, of course, entertain constituent concerns if there are any. Yes, and I can't see your name tag, so please. Kelly Farnsworth. The chair recognizes Senator Kelly.
So I just wanted to sort of voice a concern because I'm frustrated with the process. My constituents are very concerned about the issue that we were discussing about clinical track versus the tenure track. And this is something that needs to have a robust discussion. The point of the discussion is so that we can make educated votes as senators. And when we have a system set up where we're not allowed enough time to have a robust discussion so that we can then send it back to the Faculty Affairs Committee with some specific recommendations and understanding of what we're all experiencing. I think that's a problem, and my constituents would think that this is, we're sitting here and trying to rubber stamp things instead of actually having an active discussion, which is what we are supposed to do as senators, and have that debate. And I don't feel like that process is happening.
So I think I'll address that just for a minute, and maybe not adequately, but a beginning, which is that I am sorry that this somehow got on the agenda late in the year. I think the situation would have been much more relaxed earlier. But let me just remind you that you always have we can keep remanding it to committee to next year. You can vote it down. We can do all of those things until we have the occasion to discuss it as fully as you like. So we're democratic, it's parliamentary procedure, it's really up to you. The chair recognizes Senator.
Well, I have to respond for this.
Please, please.
It has been a while now since I wanted to say this. I have been senator for a while, and I have been trying to find a purpose here, and I have been failing. When I was elected senator, there were many faculty that gave me their condolences and said, it's a waste of time, but someone has to be there. And in the end, after all this time, I have to say, for the most part, they were right. Let me give you an example.
So I'm afraid we may be straying from the topic under discussion.
No, this is exactly that topic. And if you give me a minute, I will get there. First, I want to give you an example. We have action item, recommendation, blah, 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 BA in human biology. I can spend a week studying the department that proposes this. But I'm a full-time faculty. I don't have time to cover those items on the agenda. I'm voting here.
So
most of my vote.
We are very late today, and I think that I'm afraid we just don't have time for more today.
Well, I rest my case. You just
all right.
Proven.
It's if you
yes, I heard that before, but if I can just say one more sentence.
Well, I think we have to adjourn. All right?
I think we have to adjourn. We're 10 minutes after our appointed time.
We lie. It's a lie. It's dishonest.
I don't believe it is.
Most of the people who say, are saying it
So, the meeting is adjourned.